This video is the first in a three-part series about quality assurance, or QA, and the QA staff who conduct it during a review. This video will cover the two stages of QA in which a QA staff person will find him or herself engaged during a review. Let's talk about the two general stages of QA first. The first of these covers the period of time during which reviewers are still engaged in rating the case. It's an informal stage of QA that typically takes the form of periodic check-ins with reviewers to ensure that everything is going smoothly. It generally will not include any sort of formal review or evaluation of the reviewer's work. In other words, you won't be adding QA notes to the case. Instead, you'll be focusing more on consultation and collaboration with reviewers. You'll have discussions with them on topics that might involve item applicability, reconciling information from case-related interviews with conflicting information in the case record, item ratings, and so on. We'll talk more about this stage of QA in a moment. The second stage of QA is what takes place after reviewers actually submit their case for review by QA staff. This involves a more formal review and evaluation of their completed instrument that includes a close reading for consistency and clarity, and adding QA notes as necessary to address any areas of concern. We'll focus more on this a little later in the video. So let's talk about the first stage of QA. Once again, this is the period of time during which QA staff engage with and observe reviewers while they are still working through their case review. The goal here is to ensure that reviewers are getting the guidance and assistance they need to complete the OSRI efficiently and accurately. It's also helpful to be involved at this stage because when reviewers submit their case for formal QA, you won't be approaching the case cold. You'll have at least a basic familiarity with the facts of the case. There are a few best practices to keep in mind for this. First of all, it's a good idea to meet with reviewers very early in the case review process. In other words, while they're still familiarizing themselves with the case record. At this point, you'll want to get an initial high-level understanding of the case and its critical details. These details include things like the reason for agency involvement, who the parents are, the case goals, services the agency provided, key dates, and so on. You'll also confirm with the reviewers that the case belongs in the sample and that all the individuals they believe should be interviewed have been scheduled. As reviewers proceed with their case review, you'll periodically check back in with them to make sure they're making adequate progress and aren't getting hung up on any questions. These check-ins can also help you continue building your understanding of the case dynamics and any potential areas of concern. You should also remember that it's not always necessary to do an in-person check-in, and that phone check-ins can work just as well. You can monitor reviewer progress by remotely accessing reports, in particular, the complete OSRI report, which shows all of the completed answers and narratives for a case. Remember, though, that you shouldn't be adding QA notes at this stage. These can be a major distraction to reviewers while they're still working on completing their case ratings. If you have concerns about anything you observe during these remote check-ins, you might consider having a follow-up conversation with the reviewers. Once reviewers have fully completed their case review, a process that should involve not only completing the full OSRI, but also reviewing their answers and then running the proper names report. They will submit it to you for the formal review that takes place during QA's second stage. While different QA staff may have very different approaches to how they handle this formal QA of the instrument, there are a few best practices you can keep in mind, particularly if you're new to this process. First of all, it's generally not a good idea to immediately begin adding QA notes to the case on your very first read. Instead, you should take the time to read through the case at least once and familiarize yourself with how all of the items are rated. This gives you a big picture understanding of the entire instrument that you're not going to have if you only work through it one item at a time. A good way to start is by reviewing the Case Rating Summary Report. This report gives you an overview of all the item and outcome ratings in the instrument. Again, if you are staying in regular contact with the reviewers during the first stage of QA, there shouldn't really be anything here that surprises you. If there is, that's probably going to be an area of the instrument to which you'll want to pay very close attention. Once you're clear on where all the ratings have ended up, another good report to use is the Complete OSRI report. This is the report that lets you read through the entire instrument in one continuous scroll, rather than clicking through multiple screens for each item. You should read everything, paying particularly close attention to all of the narratives and rationale statements. You should also take notes as you go regarding questions you have, issues you identify, and any areas of confusion. It's at this point that you're ready to add QA notes. We'll discuss more about writing effective QA notes in the third video in this series. Thank you for watching.